Okay, another day, another dollar. We're back here at the ranch for the Country HQ Spotlight On podcast. I'm your host, Adam Simon, as always. And today I have a very, very special guest, friend, colleague, mentor, you name it. He's one of everything. Michael Carpenter, who's a cornerstone of the Australian country music industry for many, many years now. Known not just for his work as a producer, but also as a phenomenal musician. And he's here today with us to talk about his latest project, Michael Carpenter, the Banks Brothers, releasing their new album, Splitsville. Trio comprised of Michael, Jai Perry Banks and Zane Banks, who have crafted a sound over the last few years that embraces the roots of country music, yet still feels totally fresh and modern. So we're going to talk about that and so much more. Michael Carpenter, welcome to the show.
Mate, I feel like I've got a lot to live up to after that introduction, but Adam, we're friends and I always love talking to you, and it's always a great place to be here at Country HQ because we get to really flesh out why we do things. So thank you for your time today.
Not a problem, mate. Let's start at the obvious thing, the new album Splitsville. It's just dropped. It's been getting a great response. I just came back from Canberra, so it was on the repeat pattern there for a couple of days and done back and forth. How did this album come together? This is the third album for you and the Banks Brothers?
It's our fourth, actually. It's our third electric album. We had the Bluegrass album last year. Right. We've done a couple of live albums as well, separate to our proper catalogue. Look, it's an interesting thing working with the boys. We have a different way of approaching the way we're recording material. We literally just record without thinking about whether there's an album that needs to be done or anything like that.
Yeah.
Some of these songs that are on the Splitsville record date back, probably about a third of them date back to the great lockdowns of 2020. At that point, we knew we all had time, which we never do. They're as busy as I am. And so we just stockpiled. So we just started stockpiling. And the idea behind that, especially because we were a young band at that point, the idea behind that was that we would start to get a sense of our own identity by stockpiling. So there's probably 3 or 4 songs from the album that came from that, not 2020, 2021 period. And then from that, we've written more things as the project's gone along. And as we've gotten more kind of bold and clear in our vision of what we want to do and things we have done, we've kind of grown beyond that. So it's kind of like the process is informing the process, which is informing the process for us. And it's the way that I think we like to work, in the fact that we're just being creative for creativity's sake rather than thinking this is an album. And then what happens, there's just a certain point where we kind of look at the schedule with things and we look at how many songs we've got. So I think that by the time we were starting to think about album for this one, I think that there were about 15 songs. They're in our pool of songs that were at a various stage of completion. And then me and the boys will go and work out what makes the best album. It's the Bruce Springsteen approach to it. So there's a couple of songs that were actually better songs than some of the ones we've put on here. Not that we aren't happy with any of the songs we put on here, that we knew would be better served on the next record. And so this batch of songs is a batch of songs that we feel like says the thing we wanted to say right here, right now. And it means that we've already got momentum on the next project as well, which will come out some point next year.
Where did these two guys that you've come across, you come across dozens and dozens of musicians, so you work in your studio and your production. But these two guys, they're the most unique cats I've ever come across that want to be in country music, don't you? You see them, Zane's wearing a beautiful suit and so on, he's dressed to the nines, the Dr. Z, and then Jai's wearing a Adidas tracksuit and a cowboy hat and cowboy boots. Where did you come across them, and where did the genesis for the idea to form this trio come?
Look, I've been using Jai as a pedal steel player for close on 10 years now. We actually met him. I was always looking for, you know what I'm like as a record producer. I'm always looking for musician options and people are easy. And I take no credit for Jai being who he is, but it was certainly good to be able to train him a bit in terms of what I need from a pedal steel player as a session musician. And we got to the point pretty quickly where he could do his sessions remotely for me, which saves me and the client a bunch of time. He's got a fee and it means that I can just send him what I need to get going, and he just does it, and all of a sudden, a couple of takes of pedal steel comes back. Through him, I met Zane, and we straight away got on really, really well. There was never any real talk of a band. I mixed an EP or an album, I think it was, for the Cruise and Juices, which is the band that Zane and Jai have with a whole bunch of great Sydney-based musicians, and it's a very loose kind of formation. So we became friends and we became really aware of it. And then, we were mates and we'd stayed in touch. And Zane had sent me a message on the way back from the Golden Guitars in 2020.
Mm.
And he asked me how the awards were. And I said, they were great. I said, you know what it's like, you've been. And he went, well, no, I've never actually been. Which isn't the way I remembered. I thought he was there with the Morrisons a couple of years before. But he said, no, I don't really know what the Golden Guitars are all about. And as you know what these things are like, you make a joke and you go, we should start a band so we can get you the Golden Guitars next year. And it was literally one of those things we both kind of laughed at. And then when there was that pause, we went, well, actually, that's not a bad idea, because I always, as you know, and as a lot of the listeners may know, I can do a lot of stuff myself, and I certainly I have no shortage of records where I've been the whole band. So I like the idea of surrounding myself with people who are going to push me to places that I wouldn't normally go. And I knew that Zane and Jai Perry were several levels above where I'm at from an instrumental point of view. And not only that, these guys were hardcore traditionalists. Like, they were quite, at that point, uncompromising in the authenticity of the sort of country music that they listened to. Mm. And from my point of view, as a producer, I swing from all different sorts of country music, pop country and country rock and, really straight country and stuff that is barely country. And so for them, having them and me together, there was this sense of, okay, if we were going to make a record, what would it be? Yeah. And on the way home, Zane and I I was literally pulling over on the highway on the way home, adding things to a playlist that we created that was a communal playlist. And by the time we came home, we had about 5 hours of stuff to listen to that was in the style of what we would want our project to be. And that's just been our kind of template for things. And that ranges everything from the band to Waylon Jennings to traditional bluegrass records, to Buck Owens, to the Bakersville Sound, to Steve Earle, to the Eagles. And so for us, what it meant was we had this very, very broad spectrum of what we consider to be country music that allows us to have a playground for us to play in. And all 4 records have been us just really diving into that and trying to explore what else we can come up with. And as we do it, we go, well, we've done that. We don't need to necessarily do that again.
And that's the amazing thing. I mean, it's trios of, there's been trios and duos and bands and so on, but a trio can be such a small thing because you can have that synergy between you so close together. But when you fuse together, I think historically, genre-wise, and I suppose from a production or mentally, I think that's where this sound is really coming out. And I mean, you've all managed to balance this classic country sound, but still keeping it very fresh and contemporary. I mean, I look at the closing track, the instrumental, the Gold Fever. I mean, hats off to you for putting an instrumental as a closing track. We always want that anthem as the closing track, but this is a track which could be heard on a Morricone film, could be heard on a Tarantino film, or I can't actually wait to see live. I mean, is that where that I suppose understanding of each other and almost that unspoken belief in each other that comes through?
Well, Adam, you've actually really touched on a really important point, and this is going to probably come as a bit of a surprise to you. I mean, we're 4 albums in, and we've done a total of 1 session together.
Not surprised.
There's a few things about it. Like we are all busy. They've got young kids, and I've got a lot going on always. Yeah. If we needed to get us together, we wouldn't have done the first record. Like it's just impossible. However, exactly what you touched on there, we've got this real clarity of vision of what it is that we want to achieve. And more to the point, there's this really, and it's a beautiful thing actually, this really blind faith and trust in each other. So that when I send one of my tracks off to Zane, it never over 4 albums now comes back where I go, oh, actually, that's not the way I wanted you to play it. I don't even really give him a direction. I've never really had to give either of them a direction beyond some specifics, like there's a lick there, you should probably double or whatever it is. So it's very, very, very general sort of directions, because we all want this to be an expression of who we are as musicians and how we view country music within the parameters that we've set up. So it's been an incredibly easy process, and the fact that I just send them things or they send me things and they say, you do what you want to do and vice versa. Yeah. And then we get it. And then we just build on that. There might be things where I'll put down my lead vocal and I'll have a specific harmony that I want Zane to sing. So I'll map that out and he'll just redo that. and vice versa with backing vocal stuff. But the moral of the story, the best bands I've ever been in and the best bands that I've ever worked with are bands where they have a shared vision and trust within each other.
Yeah.
And we have that, and we have created this kind of work template with each other that really doesn't have any boundaries. Like, there's no real reason for us to stop doing it because they're actually very easy records to make. They're not time consuming. They're a lot of fun. And whatever happens, whatever they send back to me is what we've got, and that's what becomes the song. And there's something really beautifully almost naive about that you never really get when you're thinking about what you need to have your record doing. There's a lot of discussions in this room about, I need this record to do this. We don't need it to do anything. We just need it to be us. And that's served us really, really well so far.
The authenticity. And I think that then when you have like your current single is Running on Gas, and then you can then bring in caliber of talent like a Hamish Davidson or an Abby Ferris and some, because it is easy. Those artists aren't intimidated or put off by doing it. They just like, we can slot right in here, almost like putting pieces of like a Lego puzzle together. They can just hop on there and they make part of the sound.
That's exactly right. I mean, Hamish was a big part of our bluegrass record last year. We knew we needed a fiddle player, and Zane in particular had said, I love Hamish and I love what he does and I'd love to work with him. And so we just reached out to Hamish and said, would you like to be part of what we're doing? And he was on that record a lot. And with Running Out of Gas, actually there's 3 or 4 songs that Hamish is on the Splitsville record. And it was just one of those things. Zane was the writer, and he would say, I want fiddle on this, or he'd suggest maybe for this song you should have fiddle. And for Running Out of Gas, we sent it to Hamish, and he said, actually, I've got some dobro ideas. Do you mind? And I just went, no, just go for it. So it comes down to that thing of removing ego as much as possible, which is really hard. We're all sensitive musicians. But I don't really have any real sense of ego on this project. I mean, we try to be equal about it. So there was a discussion about making sure that Zane and I had an equal amount of songs on the record. Zane is actually, he's gone next level with the stuff we've done recently. He's really locked into writing for this record. So he's got a lot more material that we had access to. And I was it's not that I was scraping the barrel, but I needed to write some things pretty quickly just to make sure I had my quota. I must have been going through my John Lennon phase where I just wrote enough songs just to get through the projects. And that's been great because he writes and it inspires me to write, and I know that I need to lift my game. So there is that beautiful natural competition, but it's not an ego-based competition. It's just us. We're very respectful of each other and we like each other very much, and we never want the other to be offended. So it's been the perfect scenario in so many ways.
I want to put your producer hat on for a second. I mean, you're an acclaimed producer. Your resume speaks for itself. It's very impressive. In the producer vein yourself, is there someone that you'd like to record with yourself like another producer you'd like to work with to have it produce you? Or is there someone who you'd like to learn with? Say, like, because I could see you sitting in the studio with like a Don Was or a Rick Rubin and just talking and working together like magic and so on. Have you got a wish list or a Mount Rushmore of someone you'd like to work with?
There's always a bit of a wish list. I mean, from I'm never going to get there wish list. I'd love to do a session with Rick Rubin. There's a producer engineer called Jim Scott who's mixed a lot of my favorite records. He mixed Wildflowers by Tom Petty and Blood Sugar Sex Magic, and he did a lot of that Rick Rubin stuff, Courtyard Hounds record, and a whole bunch of stuff that I really, really love because they're dry and organic and authentic. I'd love to do a session with Steve Earle. One of my favorite records is Transcendental Blues. I love the way that Buddy Miller made records when he used to make a lot of records at the start of this century. So in the noughties, he made a lot of my favorite records, and he kind of
Poison Love album.
Fantastic. all that stuff. Midnight and Lonesome and records he made for other people as well. There was just a sound, and look, the aesthetic of me having kind of a studio in the house here.
Yeah,
it's based around the Buddy Miller aesthetic, where he's just kind of like come to the house and make a record, and that had a big impact on me. This is going to sound like a stupid thing to say, but I'd love to do a single with Matt Fell. My great friend Matt Fell. He's somebody that makes records in ways that I can't make records, and I don't think of making records.
Yeah.
And we've always talked about doing that, and we've certainly done no shortage of things together. But the idea of me relinquishing control. And I want to come back to that because I don't want people to think I'm a control freak. I actually don't think I am, but in particular. But the idea of just surrendering it to Matt is a beautiful thing. I admire him and respect him that much. Recently, I went down to Roundhead Studios in New Zealand and did a session with Stephen Schramm. And that wasn't for anything. That was just because I had a little bit of spare money, and me and my partner had a few days away, so we decided to go to New Zealand. And while we were there, I just booked in a day, and I just wanted to have the experience of being in that room and playing with Neil Finn's guitars, basically, and working with Stephen, who was great. And I love the sound of the new Crowded House record, and he and I have become friends. There's other guys, there's a guy called Rod Ald who I play with in a lot of my album shows. He used to be in Jonah's Road, and he's got a studio in the back section of his house, and I'd like to go and have a day with him. So I love the idea of just being out and working in other people's rooms. Yeah. But the moral of the story, I mean, that's all well and good. The reality is, I've got a lot of what I need right here, and because I'm pretty experienced at genre hopping, I can jump from, today I'm working on a punk record as well as a traditional country record, an alt country record, a podcast, and if I get time, I'm going to be doing a remix of a 20-year-old track for somebody who's looking at doing a 20th anniversary reissue of a really important Australian record. So I jump around between a lot of things, and I'm quite happy in my space. So yeah, I think that I always love the idea of collaboration. I do plenty of it in the album show stuff I do, and in my bands with the April Family and with the Banks Brothers as well. So it's just whenever I'm not doing something, I feel compelled to find time to do it. So I feel quite happy that I've done a few things in other studios this year, and it's made me feel better about being here at home.
I want to draw on that word you mentioned. You said the word important. You play an important role also behind the scenes. You're a member of the CMAA board here in Australia. How important is it for now? We're seeing this massive surge in country music, which is fantastic, both internationally and locally. I think it's peaked for the best time in 30 years. How important is it from your point of view, say, working with the CMAA, for artists to take advantage of that and continue to collaborate and to learn and to share and to have that family? We've always had that country music family as the audience, but definitely it needs to be behind the scenes now, doesn't it? So we can all benefit and share in the flowers now while we're having this massive surge and continue a path and build a industry almost for the next 25, 30, 50 years.
Yeah, look, you're touching on some pretty important reasons why I'm on the board of the CMAA. I mean, I think that we can do better as a community in terms of being supportive of each other. Yeah. I think that there's a lot of pushback about, that there's no money in making records anymore. And there's a lot of people who are really vocal about streaming and how it's robbed artists of blah, blah, blah. And look, I don't disagree with any of those points of view. Adam, you know me, we're friends. We've been friends for a long time. I tend to always try and look at the positive of every situation. And I would tend to think that what I would love to encourage amongst that community is more fearlessness in terms of creativity, of doing things just because it feels like it's a good friggin' idea, not because it makes any financial sense. Go and work with people because it would really screw with your work processes. I mean, I say Matt fell because it would be really confronting for me to go and have Matt make a record for me, and I would have to surrender control of it. And for me, that's a very positive step forward as a creative. I don't want to be in control of things. I'm usually the cheapest in my price range because I can do most of the things myself. Yeah. Behind the scenes with the CMAA, we're building things like our affiliate program that I know that you're part of as well. We're trying to build initiatives like that so that people have a greater sense of community, so that when there are new people or even people who are experienced who are looking for new people to work with, they can go to a central place and they can go, well, who is part of this community that I can work with? Or if you are a newbie and you don't know what producers are or stylists are or anything, that becomes a resource. I guess what I would like to see in my time on the board is this breaking down of these barriers between council and the CMAA. Our membership being so, defensive about the actions that we try to put in place. And also, I'll tell you, and I say this without any kind of need for sympathy, being on the board is really hard. And the fact that you'll put it initially out there in the world and then you are like a lamb to the slaughter, like you are. And if there's a, you know what keyboard warriors are like these days, if people can find a way to slam you for something, for a decision that you've made. And I feel,
well, I dipped my toe in that water a few years ago with the association. So I had long flowing black hair back then, but look at me now, see, bastards.
So I'd love it. I mean, I'd love it if people were just a bit more calm and a bit more respectful of what people are trying to do. I mean, I think that there is this misconception that the council and board members and all the people like you were sitting on piles of money while we do all this. Everybody who's on the board, for anybody who isn't aware, we probably give up 5 or 6 hours a week. 5 or 6 hours a month free. We don't get paid anything to be on the board. There's no perks. There's no advantages. There's no anything. Right. And I'm not saying this to get sympathy at all. We all do it willingly, but it'd be nice to do that and not be so heavily disrespected when we try to do something that we think is going to benefit everybody. For me, even with the affiliate program, I sat on that for a couple of years within the board because I was very, very concerned about what the backlash is. I'm a pretty sensitive guy, and I try to stay very, very positive, but I don't take bullying very well. I never have, and I don't really stand for it.
No.
And as you all know from my social media, hey?
Yeah. Nor should we. There's no place in society, let alone our beautiful industry.
That's right. And as you know, you follow me on social media, and I tend to keep a pretty tight ship in all my posts. And when things start to run off the rails, I nip them in the bud because I don't want to stand for that I don't want to put that stuff out into the world. So I was very nervous about the affiliate program and the perceived backlash that may have happened. And there was a little bit, but mostly it was viewed as a very positive thing, and that made me feel good. So look, to answer your question, I would love it if we embraced a sense of community and we celebrated and elevated people rather than felt like we were in competition with each other. I'm really happy. I mean, we all get the green-eyed monster. We're all jealous of opportunities that come for other people. But if we step back for just 1 minute and look at the successes that these people who are our friends, who are trying to build up and encourage from a creative point of view, and we celebrate what they're achieving, we can achieve so much. We can achieve so much more than tearing people down. And that seems cliche and corny, but I just really believe it.
No. I came back from Tamworth this year with a new perspective and a bit of a motto to sort of go forward after a couple of different things. And it was like, when the tide rises, all the ships rise. And that's how we must think. How we must think.
Yeah, it's a really, really big one, and we're seeing that with some of the successes we're having, not only with country music as a genre in this country, but with our artists who are starting to move up to the next level, like I'm not resentful of any of the work that those people who are starting to get those opportunities have, because it raises an awareness of all the things that we're doing. Now, I don't have any aspirations to be in competition with those guys, but I'm very proud of the work that they're doing. I don't have to like all the work that everybody's doing either. That's the thing. I think we live in this community where everybody thinks we have to like all of what everybody does. We don't. We just don't have to just go and tear them down for doing it, If we really support artists, we have to support their need to trip over and stumble or do whatever the fuck they want. We don't have to love it all, but we have to support their need to be creative. It's a really, really big thing for me. Like, I've got artists who I love, and I don't love all of what they do, but I totally respect their need to be creative and explore their creativity. I mean, look, I still get emails every friggin' week or two from people saying, "Oh, mate, I wish you'd trade in your cowboy hats and go back to Rickenbacker guitars like you did when you were good, when you were making power pop records." And that's all well and good, and I let it brush off me now because I'm living my life and I'll do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if they listened to some of my records, but because I think they're quite good.
Better if they bought them, even better.
I'm just a pop writer anyway. They're all pop songs anyway. They just got banjos.
But you have to evolve. You have to evolve, If you don't, I mean, I idolized Meatloaf and so on, right? And I just saw this man who had this massive success and could never recapture it until 25 years later. And it aided him. I got to know him quite well personally. It aided him. And it was like, he was just stereotyped. And he was so lambasted for every single thing that he'd done previously. He was this giant of a man and had this riddled with anxiety on stage, you know, and it was so sad. And mental health, I mean, we'll have another chat about mental health another time because that's a whole different thing. I said to someone a few weeks ago, I was talking to someone saying, "Are you okay?" Day's fine, but it should be, "I'm not okay, but that's okay" day. You know, we need to talk about that. But that's a whole different discussion for another time. I want to come back before we wrap up to the Banks Brothers. What's next? Are we going to see Splitsville a tour, some live gigs, or are we waiting to Tamworth? What's happening with the band, you and the Banks Brothers?
We don't have any gigs booked until Tamworth. We've got only a couple of showcase things. Look, we would love there to be more festival things coming our way, but we're just one of a million bands out there trying to get onto very few festival spots, and we certainly throw our hat in the ring. I try hard to not be disappointed in the fact that we're now 8 Golden Guitar nominations in and we can't get on some basic festival sort of things. I mean, I would like to think that has some value, but that's okay. That's not why we do it. And we had a really we did have a conversation in here about 12 months ago about whether we should be doing more gigs and stuff like that. And we had a really clear band discussion about the fact that we're much more interested in making records than playing gigs. And at the moment, with Jai and Zane both having young kids, it's a juggle. Jai's got young kids. Me and my kids are a bit more grown up, so I've got a bit more flexibility. So, look, I think that it's taking its own momentum. There will be another record next year. We're getting into the system of there's 2 electric records and then a bluegrass record. So we already have a clear idea. We've already started writing material for what will be the next bluegrass record, which probably won't be until 2026 now. But yeah, the plan is for us to keep going. We'll probably just pause for a little while, but over the Christmas break, we'll start working on the songs that are left over from the Splitsville record and start getting a shape to what will be the record that will be next year. Yep. There's a couple of real beauties already. And look, the thing about these guys is we can pull together a live show really, really quickly. We've used a variety of rhythm sections. They all know how it works. We all have things charted and we use good guys and we have an expectation that we can just walk in and play. The 3 of us play together really, really well and understand the balance of all that. So we're ready to go whichever way we need to go. I think the secret to being a creative in 2024 is to be nimble, and this band is nimble. It can go wherever it needs to go. So we're in a really good place for us to be nimble creatively and artistically and as a live presence as well.
Last question. Give me one word. What's it feel like to be Michael Carpenter when you walk out on stage?
Well, today it's head coldy. It's sniffly. Look, it feels pretty good. One word would be satisfied. Yeah.
And that's the best we can hope for. It's the best we can hope for and everything we venture for.
Yeah, look, and for me, and a little caveat to that one word is that, you know, I'm a 57-year-old guy who does music for a living. I'm wearing a Big Star t-shirt and a baseball cap in my house. I've got a dog sitting at my feet in a room full of guitars. Everything from here is bonus territory for me, but there's a responsibility to myself and my family and to my legacy to have as much fun as I possibly can creatively and do as many things as I possibly can while I still can. Now, that may be, you know, there's a joke among my family that I'll be doing mixed tweaks on the day of my funeral, which is probably fair.
From inside the coffin.
From inside the coffin, yeah. So that's where I am. I'm very, very pleased. And if something ungodly happened to me tomorrow, I'd be very, very happy with my legacy as it is now. But I do have a responsibility to do as much more of it with it, not only from a musical point of view, but with people like you and with the community to make it better. Yeah. You know, I'm a likable guy that people get on with and people seem to respect me just enough that I can have some influence on changing people's perspectives on things. And I take that responsibility on and I welcome it.
I want to see the Michael Carpenter sledgehammer at the merch stand and we can knock some of those walls down together. I'll be the first person to buy them. But Michael, it's been always a pleasure to talk to you. It's a fantastic album. It's a fun album. And guys, if you haven't seen Michael Carpenter and the Banks Brothers, it's one of the highlights of Tamworth for me this year in the beer garden there at the Tamworth Hotel. They do plenty of other gigs. You've got to go and see them. Support this trio. Support them live. Support them by getting their new album, Splitsville. It's a great album. And as listeners, I encourage you, we've got a long weekend coming up. Dive right into it. Put it on for your grand final. No one cares about the grand final. It's Melbourne and Penrith. Yeah. You know, but play some music in your barbecue along the weekend and head on up to Tamworth and see these guys because we're certainly looking forward to it. Make sure you check out Michael and the Banks Brothers on their socials as well and all the streaming platforms wherever you get good music. And while you're at it, don't forget to follow the Country HQ Spotlight On podcast. Like, share, subscribe. Listen to it all long weekend if you want. We'll love you even more. And we'll see you all next time. Michael Carpenter, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Adam. I love talking to you, mate. Keep up the good work.
Thanks for joining us today on the Country HQ Spotlight On podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends to keep listening to our next episode for the latest and greatest in country music from around the world.